girl. How you feeling? Well, staying hydrated, meditating, getting some sun, touching some grass, scratching the grass, all that. All the things. All the things.
All the things. I hear that.
This is Black Writer Doula Sessions, and I am Alashawn, your story doula and unlicensed therapist.
It's a girl, Ella.
This micro podcast is part of the Black Writer Therapy podcast platform, made possible by listeners like you on the Alive Podcast Network. Every week, Black women writers receive 10 to 15 minutes of direct somatic informed support for those moments unique to our experience in the writing industry. Each session is an answer to my favorite question.
I got you, Ella. I got you.
How you healing, sister? Yeah. How you healing, sister? Yeah. Yeah. How you healing, my sister? Yeah. How you healing, sis?
Is that it? Did I get that? Okay. I think that's a wrap. I feel good about that. All right. Welcome to Black Writer Doula Sessions, a micro podcast brought to you by Black Writer Therapy Podcast on the Alive Podcast Network. Be sure to tap in to over 100 Black podcasters on the only Black woman-owned podcast network with its own proprietary app. I am Alashawn, your unlicensed therapist and the only story doula you will ever know. So, last week on Black Writer Therapy, we had ER doctor turned cultural critic and published author, Miss Ina Oakes, who wrote an amazingly beautiful and exquisite book of essays and poems and little notes entitled From a Studio in Oakland, California, 108 Notes on Existence. That is now live on the Black Writer Therapy podcast platform. So be sure to go check it out because you're going to want to hear. Today, we're pulling one of the most important gems she dropped during our 1 hour and a half conversation about the luxury to experience the sacredness of the everyday, of the ordinary. For many Black women writers, rediscovering and reimagining the everyday as luxurious comes with a slew of emotional, mental, and spiritual landmines. I want to share some doula do's and don'ts when excavating during this very important stage of the writing process. So let's get to it. First, let's define what excavation is, what the stage of the writing process is. And for those of you who might be very new, we discuss writing process and all the pitfalls that meet us as Black women writers that may take us out of our writing flow. And as a story doula, I work with writers to make sure what they are writing, what they intend to share with the world actually gets done. I am not a writing coach. A story doula is someone who helps writers through the difficult moments of the process of writing. If we don't take the time to commit to each step in the writing process and gain an understanding of what is happening to our personal somatic systems, to our internal alarms, to all the things that are going on during every stage of the process, then we could fall into the trap of, I have writer's block, or I'm dealing with imposter syndrome, or I don't know, I've lost interest in what I was writing. I am here to help Black women writers specifically, Black women writers specifically who write difficult materials, get through the process and do so safely. during this excavation stage, this is early days, right? This is where you have this idea that kind of pops into your head for either a short story, a poem, an essay, a novel, a play, whatever you're writing. And you decide, I need to go dig around in my memory. I need to research myself. I need to research my imagination so that I am able to figure out what it is I know about this topic and perhaps even what inside of me has become the inspiration. This part of the process began with what was known as a KWL organizer. I'd ask, what do you know about this subject? And I always spell know, lowercase k, capital N, capital O, lowercase u. What do you know? And I emphasize the no as in the negative, because most people think they know less than they actually know. And then we have W. What do you want to know? Lowercase w, uppercase A-N-T. I like to emphasize the word ant in the word want. And this is because ants are some of the hardest working insects in the world. And they are the strongest, one of the strongest. And lastly, in the L section, what I, lowercase l, capital E-A-R, lowercase N-E-D, what I learned. And the word that is being emphasized here is ear, because during the excavation, because you need to learn to listen to yourself. It requires attention and intention. The first doula do I am going to share with you is, please know that you know as much as you think you do. Be an ant when you are excavating information. Listen to yourself. Now, most of us like to think of excavation as note-taking and outlining. You need to know what about this story idea is going to bring up some stuff that's probably not going to sit very well with you. You need to know what's going to trigger you. You're not digging deep to see what it is you do know, and you're not being an ant within your own intuitive self, and you are not listening to your body, to your mind, to your spiritual inclinations, then I can assure you, when you get down to the nitty-gritty of writing, writer's block, imposter syndrome, excavation is the excavation of self to ensure that what is going to be written about can be written about safely for the writer. Okay? So for Black women writers, especially those working from lived experiences, excavation tends to be a whole body event. It's the moment the ordinary, the unremarkable, the everyday starts talking back. And so Miss Enya gave us an amazing situation where she put all her stuff in storage and started traveling. She says, I had never really paid attention to nature. If anything, it was just a bother. She gave herself the right to be a part of nature.
And now a small excerpt from the Black Writer Therapy session where guest Enia Oaks talks about finally recognizing the luxury in the everyday, in the ordinary.
Healing, self-inquiry, the sacredness of ordinary life. Like, ooh, girl, the poetry. The sacredness of ordinary life. The poetry in that tiny little phrase, right? In the vernacular, in the everyday. Please speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's something that I realize is actually a luxury to be able to be that present in your life. And it wasn't until I put down all of these pieces, when I quit after being burned out and I, went and I was just cooking and riding my bike and reading, and then suddenly I've always enjoyed being in nature, but suddenly the colors are vivid. Suddenly, this walk feels magical and there's nothing different about it's the same house my parents have lived in, since I was 14. There's nothing different about the
Right,
street,
right.
but suddenly everything is different, you know, everything is more vivid and alive, and it's only in the absence of the stress and anxiety of everything else we carry that you just get to feel like life feels beautiful. So it's not something that's just, you know, when you're running around like a chicken with your head cut off, the last thing you're noticing is the bird. If anything,
Exactly,
you're like,
right?
yeah, if anything, you're like, oh, this bird is so loud, you know.
Exactly. Everything is an annoyance. Everything is a problem when you're in the midst of a problem, which is, you know, not living, existing. You just, good grief. We have not even gotten into the podcast yet, and you've been like dropping gems. I love that. The sacredness of ordinary life. Like, this is something that I found. I think I found this out when I was maybe 12. It is that self-indulgent excavation where you are looking at a topic of writing from the ordinary, from the sacredness of the everyday, right? And then you are listening to that. You are waiting for that ordinary, everyday, excavated material to speak to you. When a client comes to me, I had this idea. When a client comes to me and they're stuck in this stage, it's usually because she's run up against something that doesn't look dramatic enough to write about. And I've heard so many different things, right? It's just a small thing. It's not really all that special. It's not really that important. And that is where I start digging, because it is always the small things, right? I have this little book of quotes, and one of them said, "The future is made up of right nows." Everything we do, everything we say, every thought that crosses our mind is a huge thing in the scope of experiencing our writing. We have got to stop downplaying the everyday, the small things that for so many of Black women writers has never been important, because it is not something that registers within the white community as a thing of material matter. Like the way my grandmother used to clean her house meticulously, and not with Pine Sol or anything that was purchased. She made everything she cleaned with. She made a new broom every couple of days to sweep her backyard, to sweep her back porch. It is the care she took with picking peppers and then jarring them in vinegar so that when it was time for collard greens, she had fresh, hot, vinegared peppers that we could put in there and add that little bite of heat in a yummy pot of collard greens. It's how she dusted all of the wooden furniture with, the oils and all the things that she had put together and refused to do it with anything else. It's how she only cleaned the windows in our house with white vinegar, a little bit of water, and newspaper. Never a rag, always newspaper. These small, tiny details that seem so unimportant are the details that will make the story, that will make your story come to life. And also, they are the small, tiny details that will light up your nervous system. It will send us down memory lane where a smell, a sound, a sentence, something that someone said 20, 30 years ago still resonates somewhere in our somatic system. And that is where we get stuck. Excavation is not glamorous. It is sifting through the muck, the mire of what you and your mind have either suppressed or tried to forget or have buried under rainbows and gumdrops. It is listening to what you almost forgot. And here is the truth of it. When you start writing into the ordinary and you stop looking for these grandiose things to write about, you stop looking for these, indelible, oh my gosh, this is cutting edge. This is, and I can't even remember the word agents use. If I do, I'll blurt it out. But, they want the story that is like next level and all the things, right? What about Black women writing into the ordinary? Doesn't sell. The publishing industry is like, no, we don't necessarily want Black women ordinary shit. We want high concept. That's what they say. That's what they call it. We want high concept material from Black women writers. And I have read beautifully plain, ordinary books written by white women. Simple shit like going to grandma's house, spending the summer there, and all the things that happen in this small town. Why is it that white ordinary is fine and considered literary works, but Black women writers who want and desire to write into the ordinary have to basically add a goblin or something outside of everyday vernacular Black life? That shit is triggering. It is another reason people get stuck in excavation, right? Because you're not just recalling facts. You're testing which parts of your life feel safe to not only touch, but to share, knowing full well that if you are going the route of traditional publishing, or even if you're doing hybrid publishing, however you are pursuing, somebody's going to say, who the hell cares about your grandma's canning of vegetables in this fictional story? We want action. But y'all, with the way this country and the world keeps erasing who and what and why and how Black people are, it is the ordinary that is necessary to write into and about. This is kind of where story doula comes in. My job is to notice when your body starts to tighten around a memory or an image. It is to notice when tension rises because you are thinking this is not going to sell. No one wants to read about Black women in ordinary life. As a doula, I notice the tension, and it tells me that during this excavation process, you just hit something that is going to blow your writing through the roof. Not necessarily traumatic, but charged, right? With meaning. I don't like these feelings that are coming up, and so I'll pause. I don't have to tell anybody, and it's none of their business. I'll find some other fake thing to write about. No. If you are excavating and you come across something in your mind, in your soul, in your emotional body that really makes you want to just say, no, this is not going to happen. 9 times out of 10, it needs to happen. It needs to be written about, right? And that's where you call me and you say, hey, Ella, girl, listen, I'm stuck like Chuck in the excavation. And I got really good stuff until I got to this part. And I'm not quite sure what to do with that. Here is a doula do. When you are stuck in some space of your excavation, we need to name what's happening. Because the moment you name a thing, then you have now taken power away from it because you have called it something. When you can name it, then that means you have created it, have called it out of the darkness into the marvelous light. And that's why, I'm just kidding. That's why it's important, right? To have someone to help you name what is happening in your body. Because once you can name what's happening in your body, when you come across this thing, as a doula, I can say, yeah, it's hitting this and this and this in your somatic system. And so we need to do something to combat that. And so we move on, right? Something in the detail is loaded. Now we have to get to what this thing loaded with. And again, what's happening in your body when you're thinking about all the parts of this piece of excavated material stopping you in your tracks. The writing isn't asking for a solution. It's asking for honesty. And honesty means vulnerability. And vulnerability means bleeding onto the page. It does mean putting it all out there for people to see and hear and experience. And honesty and vulnerability is scary as hell. Here's a doula don't. Don't run from your own story. Don't run from your truth. Don't be afraid to put yourself on the page. I'm stuck. I cannot go forward. Something about this part of my writing, something about what I know about this is messing me up. First thing you want to do is a sensory inventory. What charged in your body? What part of your body is saying, I don't know if I want to go there? Depending on where you're sweating, well, those are different systems being activated. Has your breath become shallow? Or are you breathing deeply? Did you just stop breathing at all? Are your eyes dilated? Do you feel like you need to run away? Do you feel like you need to stay, hunker down, and stare it in the face? Do you feel like you need to fight something? These are all sensory changes in the body. Once you pinpoint what senses are going off, where in the body they are, ask yourself the question, what thought came just before I decided I have writer's block or I am not feeling this anymore? What memory is that that's knocking on the interior of your mind that you just don't want to deal with? You want to always keep a notebook with you when you're doing excavation. Yes, you're taking notes on what you remember. And also, you want to have something there, a little section in the back of the book that says things that make me go, oh, no, ma'am. Right? I don't know. Call it whatever you want to. Because in that way, you can jot down these steps, right? Do a sensory situation. Ask yourself what thought was coming in right before I decided I don't want to do this anymore. What memory is right behind that thought? You want to jot down in the notebook, jot down some information about all of it because nobody's going to see it. It's for you and possibly me if you decide you need a story doula to help you work through these things. It helps you track the emotional weather of your writing sessions, right? It helps you see how your emotions are tied to either the productivity of your writing or the thwarted nature of your writing. Over time, patterns will emerge. Which topics bring in resistance? You want to start looking at these patterns. Which systems do you need to stay open and receptive versus the ones that can kind of just, lay down in the background when you're writing? This is the data that will allow me as a story doula to help writers read, not count words, but regulate patterns, right? So let's talk about a quick mini reframe. Writing into the ordinary isn't about diminishing the work. It's about refining perception. When you sit down as a Black woman and say, I'm going to write into the everyday, you are committing yourself to finding the luxury of writing into the beautiful everyday experience of being a Black woman. Those experiences are being erased left and right so that Black women will be remembered on one extreme or the other, either lazy, no good, out here living off of any and everybody, won't work on a pie train eating pies, all the things, no creativity, no intuition, no get up and go about herself, uneducated, all the things. So we are either going to exist on that end of the spectrum or we're going to exist on the angry, I can do it all by myself. And so much so that I don't need a man because I am a man and I don't have any femininity. I'm a masculine, this, that, and the third. And I handle this and I probably got bigger balls than most men and I can do this, that, and the third. So don't even step to me. And that is where they are going to try and put the Black woman, right? Nothing or the opposite of a woman, okay? When in all honesty, we are the blueprint for womanhood. We are the blueprint for softness. We are the blueprint for productivity. We are the blueprint for intelligence, for creativity, for all the things. And we do it all every day in our everyday, ordinary, vernacular life. Cleaning a house isn't just cleaning a house. We are taking care of our family. We are blessing our floors. We are ushering in our ancestors and asking them to guide and protect us. When we are in the kitchen cooking, we are putting certain herbs into our foods because we know these herbs are going to do X, Y, and Z, and they're going to bring in protection and they're going to usher in prosperity. They're going to make sure that these things don't rise up against the people that we love because we feed our people our love. The food, yes, but it is the love that protects them. It is the knowing of the natural world that bolsters them up, right? And so sewing a quilt with a bunch of women friends once a week and you're sewing these beautiful quilts, this ain't about keeping somebody warm. I mean, it will keep them warm, but you're telling stories. You're passing history. You're giving generational understandings and understandings of how the family came to be. There is no ordinary when it comes to being a Black woman. How in the hell can anything be ordinary about an extraordinary group of, and that is what we have to learn to appreciate and then put into writing, because otherwise we're going to be on the left end, never did shit, never was shit, ain't never gonna be shit, or we're gonna be on the right end, they have morphed into men, and so now they don't necessarily, they're not really women, right? That can't happen. And so when we are working through these doula do's and the doula don'ts, it is helping you to teach yourself to hold complexity without spectacle, to share the complex nature of the ordinary everyday without making it a Moms Mabley story. And nothing wrong with Moms Mabley. She was a great comedian. Without making it something that, will be picked over by those who could never understand the beauty in sitting on a pillow between your mother's legs while she parts your hair, greases your scalp. Nothing felt better than just that finger dipped in the grease, going along your scalp, and then that hair being pulled into 3 different sections and braided onto that scalp, and then carefully threading these beads onto the hair, pulling it through, pushing it back up, getting the smallest rubber bands, rubber banding that one bead at the end, pulling the rest down to cover that rubber band with care, with love, with precision, with you are my child and I desire for you to see the beauty in yourself. And it is imperative that as your mother, I send you into the world in the very best presentation possible, because I will be the one who is maligned and chastised and all the other things if I don't take the care to make sure that the little things are the big things, right? So when we hit something that makes us flinch in our writing of the everyday, don't assume you're blocked. Assume you've arrived at what you really need to be writing about. The affirmation during the excavation stage: the everyday is worthy of my attention. The everyday is worthy of my attention. What I notice, I honor. What I honor, I write. If you are in a position where you can actually sit up straight, make sure your feet are on the ground, the floor, flat, and you can close your eyes, then I'm going to ask you to do so as we are preparing to close out this session of Black Writer Doula. Inhale through your nose for the count of 3. Hold at the top for 1. Exhale to the count of 6. Hold for the count of 9. And then breathe normally. Close your eyes. Each time you inhale, see yourself expanding into the universe. Every time you exhale, see yourself contracting into the humane state of being in which we get to experience life. We are replicas of the universe. We expand and contract throughout the day, every part of our body. And every time you inhale and you hold that space, you are holding life and death in your throat. Inhale for 3. Exhale for 6. Hold for 9. Thank you so much for joining me on Black Writer Doula Sessions. If this has resonated with you at all, and you're realizing that excavation keeps tripping you up, that you keep doing research outside of yourself during this initial stage of the writing process, then it's a good moment to bring it into me, eStory Doula. I will leave my information in the show notes. I offer a 30-minute free consultation via Zoom. I would love to assist you in whatever stage you are getting stuck and tripped up in. I help writers recognize what's surfacing. I help you name it, and then you find the right moves so that the story keeps unfolding without self-betrayal, self-harm, or negligence to the story. You can connect with me through the link in the show notes or join our Black Writer Wellness community on Substack. That's where I post monthly process reflections and gentle frameworks for staying grounded while you write what matters. All right, guys, that's it for this session. Keep digging, but do it with awareness. Okay, we'll see you next week on Black Writer Doula Sessions, where we pluck another gem from the conversation I had with Enya Oaks at the beginning of this month of October. And if you've not listened to that, please go back and listen to it. That young lady is an inspiration. I am Alashawn, your unlicensed therapist and story doula. Continue writing what matters, because if you don't, then we cannot complain.
Let's do it for the lady. Reclamation of the woman. Reclamation of the woman. Reclamation. Yeah. Of the woman. Come on. Hey, here stand face to face with myself and my lies. I let chase me into the bottomless pit. Come on. I now stand and I tell myself to feel better about the choices I didn't make, about the chances I was too scared, too afraid to take, about the hurt I swallowed, the pain I let follow, then put me in my current state, in my place, in my current place. I deserve better than I can deserve, and I deserve better than I'm standing for now. I deserve to be happy, I deserve to be well loved, I deserve to be all the things that every little girl dreamed of. That's right, now come on. This country respects wives, and they respect mothers too. But what about the woman who gives up everything? What about where's the respect for what we go through? Come on. I deserve better than I gave myself. I deserve better than I'm standing for now. And I deserve to be happy. And I deserve to be well loved. I deserve to be all the things that every little girl woman she was. Yeah. How can he despise her strength? It's what's holding him holding him down, keeping his head above water and his feet on the ground. Ladies, we deserve better than we give ourselves. We deserve better than we're standing for now. We deserve to be happy. Yes, we deserve to be well loved. We deserve the old thing that every little girl ever dreamed of. We deserve, we deserve, we deserve, we deserve, we deserve. We holding him up, holding him down, keeping his head above water and his feet on the ground. We deserve better than we're giving ourselves. We deserve better than we're standing for. We deserve to reclaim our womanhood. That's what I'm talking about.
Thank you for joining us. We're proud to be part of the Alive Podcast Network. Be sure to tap into the only Black woman-owned podcast network with its very own proprietary platform and app. When you download the Tap In app, you gain access to nearly 100 Black creative voices. To support Black Writer Therapy, subscribe and choose me as your favorite podcast host. 50% of your subscription fee goes directly to this show and allows me to continue to bring you quality content like this. Until next time, remember, be kindest to yourself first, always, and in all ways. I am Alashawn, your host for Black Writer Therapy Podcast.